Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 29th, 2021 edition of Beyond the Data. And I think this one is going to be very, very interesting because Carrie is going to talk a lot about the approval process for vaccinations and some of the things I had no clue about as well. And I'm still a little like shaky on how all this all fits together because the FDA is a tangled mess of bureaucratic language that I am very frustrated reading, and a lot of other people are. But Carrie knows obviously quite a lot about how this whole thing fits together. So, without further ado, you want to walk us through the process nice and slow, kind of like I'm like 5 years old would be great.
So I will do my best to walk you through the process. And there's a few different avenues that an approval can take. Obviously, there is what's called the traditional pathway to approval, and that takes approximately 8 to 10 years. Some have taken longer, but that's kind of like an average, that 10 to 12 years, 8 to 12, depending on what the product is. So every vaccine must be licensed. And I think that's really important to understand, is there is a difference between a licensure and a full approval. So every single product must be approved for something. Vaccines have to have or earn a BLA, which is a biologic licensure application. So they first get a license, and then once more data is gathered in a real world situation, then they get an approval. A lot of times, because it's such a lengthy process, that those two applications come in at the same time. So there's a very short period of time before they are licensed and approved. Once they can have that, then they have the ability to label and market.
So this is where I'm really confused here, because when you had explained this process to me, I don't know how many months ago, and explained the difference between the BLA and full vaccine licensure. And when I'm reading all of these articles and stuff, I'm like, what is going on here? Because I understood first you get your BLA, then you get your full vaccine license, and but they also say that the BLA is a biologic license approval.
Correct.
So they're using both the words at the same time. And right there, you just said the process, usually they apply for both. But as I understand, they did not apply for full vaccine, but they're making it sound like they did.
So it's what it has right now. So their license application has been approved.
The biologic.
Yes, so they gain licensure. A biologic, when you think about what is a biologic, it's anything that is traditional, which means it's developed in a lab, or it's made with live. So there's live biologics. Those are the two different types of biologics, but they're both still biologics. So if you think of, for those that have autoimmune or ulcerative colitis, which is still an autoimmune, or Crohn's disease, you might see them come across the TV for Remicade, for Enbrel, Humira. Those are all biologics
because they're made from
biological from either a live cells of some type, or they're made from cells in a laboratory,
as opposed to using a whole bunch of chemicals, mixing them together.
Right.
That's the difference between biologic and non-biologic. What's the name for those that are
well, it could be anything. It could be, an antibiotic. That you have all these classifications. So you've got, your therapeutic, which is where we're at right now. That's a biologic license application approval would be a therapeutic base. And then once in a lot of treatments like Enbrel or Humira, that's never intended to be a vaccine. There's still a biologic, so they would not go ahead and file for that extra vaccine status, because that's not the endpoint. That's not what they're attempting to achieve. What they're attempting
Biologic
to
is the end of the line there.
Right. They're attempting to remain a therapeutic for whatever they're approved for. So that would, at that point, they would stop. Whereas with any time you're trying to gain vaccine status, you have to give a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
Which
there's
makes sense.
more data. Right. You do, because now you're asking it to prevent something.
Yeah.
You
So you're
either
dealing
want
with
it,
a healthy person, and it's important to know if you're going to do more harm to the healthy person,
right.
and good. While with
Yeah.
a biologic, well, that person's already got issues,
Right.
already unhealthy, so you don't need that extra information to know you should not be doing this in certain populations. So the vaccine licensure is there to make sure that they know
That'd be a vaccine approval.
So
It's a biologic license vaccine approval.
Okay, so there's no license for the final step, which is the vaccine approval. Okay, so the license is attached to the biologics approval. That's what drives me nuts, where it's like they use both the words license and approval in the BLA.
Well, because their license was approved.
Yeah, and then in the vaccination, it's only vaccine approval. Am I getting it right? Okay.
Right. So So if you think of like Kineret was one of those medications that it came onto the market for one thing, but it was actually approved for something else by the time that the study was done. So it gained a biological license, but it was approved for actually to treat headaches. And then, it's what it originally was introduced for, which was to treat juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. It did not gain approval for that. It gained approval for headaches, but it can be used off label for adult RA. So even those JRA patients, once they hit adulthood, it can be used for that. But and that's what happens when you have an orphan drug or an orphan therapeutic, is it'll be introduced for one thing, and something happens along the course and more information is discovered, and it might treat this better. Same with methotrexate. Methotrexate is a chemo medication used to lyse a tumor. But we see it used all the time in rheumatoid arthritis and all types of, immune issues that are happening. So, that's kind of, first of all, you have to look at what is it? Well, every single vaccine that we have that's been around since as long as the FDA has been around, they all have a biologic license approval. So they had filled out an application for a biological license, which is called a BLA, and then and that license gained approval, and then they were able to show enough data to have the vaccine status be approved as well. When that happens, then an NDC number can come into play, which is a national drug code, which is needed to market and to manufacture.
So this is where I'm getting confused here. This is where I'm getting stuck. Because when I look at the things that are being put out there, they're talking about it can be marketed. It now has a name. It now they can. This is where I'm getting confused, because I'd looked all this stuff up before when you had first been telling me about it. And when I look at what's been published just now, it allows them to market it. But are they allowed to market it only as a biologic then?
Yes.
Like they add in the word vaccine, and it's just like it can.
But you have to really look at that wording on that document. They can manufacture. They are authorized to manufacture as a vaccine. It does not say you are approved to manufacture as a vaccine. So it's really important every single line to look at that. Yep, there it is.
But that's the thing. I mean, I kind of knew the story, and then what I saw confused me so
Yep,
much.
under this license,
It's
under the
right here.
license, and we know it's a biological license. Yep, so they're controlling to manufacture and sale of biologic products. I don't know how big it is on everybody else's screen, but it's really small on mine, so forgive me. But that next paragraph, under the license, you are authorized to manufacture the product COVID-19 vaccine mRNA, which is indicated for active immunization to prevent coronavirus disease 2019 caused by severe acute SARS in individuals 16 years of age and under. So that 12 to 15 is still EUA.
That makes more sense.
Yep. So, and then when you go down and it says the review of this product, I can talk. It's been a long week at fair. The clinical trial number. So right now it only has an NCT number.
And it needs an what did you say?
NDC number.
NTC is that means an EUA.
Well, this is a clinical trial, not necessarily EUA, because everything goes under, there's nothing that we don't come in contact with that hasn't been trialed in some way, shape, or form.
And an NDC means?
It's National Drug Code.
Okay, so
I can pull it up, and that's going to tell me, no matter what it is, that it was a batch of amoxicillin manufactured in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was signed off within 2 standard deviation from this time to this time, and this is where it went to. So it's fantastic for tracking.
So the NCT, so we know that it is truly fully approved as a vaccine when we have an NDC number attached to. So the very fact that it's coming out of NCT is still telling us that this is still experimental.
In clinical trial.
In clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
No, it does not have full FDA approval. It only has FDA approval as a biologic.
No, it's licensed as a biologic. The application for the biological license was approved.
Oh my goodness!
You just have to watch, watch what order you put your words in. So it is the biological license is most certainly approved for this product for ages 16 and up.
And only an EUA still for those.
For 12 to 15, correct. Mm-hmm. And they are hoping to gain more data. I believe it's like October. They're hoping to submit more from ages 2 and up.
I love all these, redactions in here too. It's fabulous.
So right, that's really important. Can you go right back up there? Can you scroll back up?
To this one?
A little bit
or
higher.
To this one?
I don't know it.
This is manufacturing.
Okay, no. Okay, no. Oh my Lord, I feel like I'm on a fair ride. Yeah, go a little bit more.
Look away.
Okay, right here. Stop. Biologic product deviations. So, this is where I'm sure you've heard me talk about 2 standard deviation. Everything we do within a lab has to be within 2 standard deviation. For example, if you have a bed's pre-COVID, you had strep, or you thought you had strep. They swabbed your throat bedside, or what we call at the doctor's office, point of care testing. And they swabbed it. We know from all kinds of trials and studies that 20% of those are going to be false negative or false positive. That's why we send out, if it is negative, but clinically they look like strep, that swab goes to the lab and they plate it and watch it grow and see if it actually grows streptococcus. But that's within 2 standard deviation. 80% of them are correct. 20% of them, not so much. There's room for error, but that's an acceptable limit, is what's called 2 standard deviation. So when we look at a biological product deviation, it's the same thing. We want it to be pure, as the goal is always to be whatever the ingredients say, but there is room for a 2 standard deviation, and they have to ensure once it is licensed that that product, each dose will be within that 2 standard deviation. A product that we have on the market now that some people just do not tolerate well, if it's not, is the brand you always know. It's called, where's Danielle? Because she could say it right off the top of her head. It's a thyroid medication, Synthroid. There you go.
Oh.
Synthroid has to, like, some people, especially if they don't have a thyroid at all, they have to have that brand because they know that if it's 75 micrograms, then it's 75 micrograms every single pill. Whereas with a generic, it can be, this pill can be 73, the next one can be 77. It's still within 2 standard. And some people just do not tolerate that well, so they have to have that brand.
Yeah, that's a good point. A general, tip that it really is, there is a difference between on brand, the name brand, and generics.
Right.
So,
and I'm not saying that, generic isn't good. I'm not saying that at all. Please don't think that. But there are just some people that cannot tolerate that, that little variation for whatever reason. At the end of the day, you're still getting, or at the end of the course of treatment, you're still getting the total amount. So, but anyways, I just wanted to point out that, because of that licensure, you now have that biological product deviation that they have to disclose.
Yeah. And that's part of that biologic license application there. I hope I described it last week, though I doubt you watched, and which I think is good because I don't want to get a pumpkin from you. But that's one of the things I had said. It talked about safety, purity, the manufacturing process in terms of the biological licensure application.
Right. And Sue has a really good point. She says, it says that it will prevent coronavirus disease. How can they say that when we all know that it does not prevent coronavirus? If you scroll up to where the very beginning of this letter, where I read it, just keep going down a little bit.
Lost control.
Yep. You're authorized to produce the product.
We're not allowed to know where it's produced.
There's 2 places. That's another story in life. I read it. Where did it go?
What are we looking for?
Where I read it out loud, and it said, it prevents the coronavirus. Oops, stop. I keep trying to touch my screen like I'm really doing something and I'm not. There it is. What it says on here is it is indicated for active immunization to prevent. So it's indicated. We don't know that it does that yet. Well, we know obviously in a real world environment, it's not doing that as well as it was felt that it would. But it just says it's indicated. So I have an indication that I'm 30 pounds lighter than what I really am.
Oh, I like that.
So, that's kind of, again, it's wording. You just have to look at the wording of the actual letter.
Yeah, but you have to know the nuances. That's the frustrating part because, you'd explained it to me. I looked it up. I followed it. I was like, okay, I think I feel comfortable with this. And this approval came out and I read it. I'm like, but that's mixing things.
And that's the point.
It's to confuse us. And this is the gross part.
And the thing is that until now, unless you're in like a science area or you're really waiting for a product to come out, so you're tracking it, most people don't even pay attention to what's happening.
I don't know. And I've been paying attention to this for a year and a half. And, I try to understand the process, what I should expect to see happen next. And when something happens next, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I am lost, especially details of,
and I'll say that typically order. Right. And typically they're not written quite like this. This one is a little bit convoluted. Shocker. Why am I surprised? But that's just the way that I don't know why that's happening to me. That's just a lot more effort to do write it like this and just lay it out there. I feel that there needs to be full disclosure. There needs to be full transparency, because then your mind doesn't start to wonder what is going on. What is all of this? Whereas if they just laid it out, and I'm not saying everybody's going to understand it if they did that, but there's like a standard letter, and you can find it, on the FDA website, of what a standard biological licensure application approval looks like. And you can compare it side by side to this, and you can see that this is not typically how that they look. So that's kind of disappointing.
So we got Rini K's question here as well.
What do we think
I'm assuming it's because it's proprietary or something like that. I don't remember what
so right. So we can now move it interstate with the BLA. That product can be manufactured and moved interstate, not just with, because like for Ohio, I don't know if you guys realize, but during like the lockdown and things, and even now, our ODOT guys were moving the therapeutics. They were moving PPE. Our ODOT, our road guys, that's what they were doing. Like, they had no restrictions on hours or anything. Doing it this way, they can now because obviously you can't have that happen forever. They can put out a bid to a company to actually move it across interstate. So
the question is with the redactions themselves. I'm assuming like a location or proprietary information or something else that is.
Both of those, and because it's only licensed, so only that initial walkthrough, well, the initial and the secondary walkthrough have been done, where they actually go to the manufacturing facility and make sure that they're doing things correctly. And one time we know that they weren't. That was disclosed during Congress, and they got these two manufacturers got a huge lump sum of COVID dollars, and it was a huge error that was made. But
could you very briefly go over what specific errors were made?
Yeah, at the Baltimore? Don't know what happened, but Pfizer, Moderna, there were two of them. One being the AstraZeneca, because we manufacture that here. It's manufactured in Maryland, and it was not a pure lot that came, and it was cross-contaminated with another one of ours that's also manufactured at that same facility.
One of the mRNAs.
Of the mRNA. So we had an AstraZeneca that was cross-contaminated with, we knew that the one of ours, they were able to narrow it down that did not get sent, but one of the AstraZenecas
mixed with mRNAs, or
right, it was. We just don't know yet, because there is not a universal way. This was not rolled out like we typically roll out, or any agency rolls out. So there isn't a universal reporting that's like bottlenecked into one area. So a state or a local might have a reporting for vaccination, or you might have a handy dandy little app where you can upload it or scan a Q code, but there's nothing mandatory. So unless the facility filled out, yep, this is what we gave, this is what we wasted, whatever. And I know Ohio is a no waste. They have that,
get it into any that you find.
Right.
Don't ask questions, don't ask for IDs, don't ask for proof. I mean, how many people did they say? I think they said over 1 million people had gotten a third dose.
Right. And because that's why.
Or just walk in, or nobody would check.
It's because there's no way to cross reference unless, one, it's like an honor system, and two, they're voluntarily reporting, like for federal, not necessarily local, but federally. So there was, one guy said, and he was very candid about it right here in Ohio. He's like, Well, the first 2 times I took my license. For my third one, I took my passport because I wanted my third dose before it was available. So somebody else said, well, they didn't even ask me. So, and if you think about it, how, granted, you have an odd name, but how many,
I'm the only person with my name, so I'm kind of
right. But there's how many John Smiths or Dave Yoders or whatever. There's even more. Believe it or not, I don't know how that happened, but there's more than one of me. So I hope she's like making more money and getting more sleep than what I am, but still, there's a lot more. So there's just no way. Or I could get 2 in Pennsylvania and come here and get if I wanted one.
Yeah.
So, and there are some people that took full advantage of that.
Scary.
But the responsibility is all on them. So with a biological license approval also comes some responsibility. So
this one, I think, perfectly segues into the next thing we were going to talk about.
Right. So it says, I got to read it all. I don't know, but I like the profile picture. I'm digging it. So I would assume there are different legal accountability standards for FDA versus EUA. Yes. So no disclosure to the patient that they are receiving a Pfizer EUA instead of would put administer of poke in legal jeopardy. I'm assuming that attorneys are chomping at the bit to start legal proceedings for adverse reactions. Well,
Pfizer, to where we wanted to go next.
Yeah, Pfizer is absolved regardless. I mean, you don't have the ability when it's in the process of going to a vaccine. Good luck. That just doesn't happen. That's why the vaccine injury fund is there. Once it gains that vaccine status, a biologic, again, you have to read your paperwork. What are you being given? So, and your age, what is it approved for? Are you, is it being used off label? So right now, a physician can write out for off label use of the brand name, which comes from COVID, mRNA, and Comirnaty together.
And immunity, because that's what we're working for.
Yeah. I thought they dropped the immunity because we know it doesn't happen.
They probably should. But
yeah, I thought that. Yeah. So anyways, it comes from that whole conglomerate of words, and they like shook it up, and that was the word that came out. Which is, there's another company that theirs is Spike something. Yeah, that's the name that they're going for once theirs is approved. Whatever. And I'm thinking, who in the heck is going to take something called Spike? I forget what it is, but it's one of those, you're like, that sounds like the name of a WWE wrestler. What the heck are you thinking? But anyway, so the biologic for the one that is approved, they can write out a prescription, the physician can, for off-label for any age.
Mm-hmm. They can go down to 2-year-olds, 6 months old, whoever.
They sure can, with a script. So if the physician writes that out for the 2-year-old and for the brand, and there's an adverse reaction, well, number one, physician is looking at malpractice and negligence, because they're the ones that recommended it, even though this country has the highest malpractice and not negligence lawsuits across the world.
So they're unlikely to do so.
So they are unlikely to do so, yes. But what they could do is suggest you go ahead and get your child, 11 and a half, going to be 12 tomorrow, the one that's under EUA, because it's still under EUA from 12 to 15. So it's just, go ahead to the vaccination station and go get Pfizer. Then that just absolves the physician and everything, because there's no script. He might have verbally said, if you feel strongly about it and you would like to do so, you can go to a health clinic or a vaccination station and get it. But if he writes out an order a
Yeah.
script
You can
with
be down on it.
that's, yeah. So I just don't see a lot of physicians, especially right now, they're not even taking that. Now they can, once there's enough of it in surplus, because that's the other thing, the one that's brand name, there's just not a lot of it to go around.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, and I like this comment. I think this is probably the most accurate comment about where that comes from.
Tina's spot on all the time.
Yeah, so I just lost it there. I mean, brain going dead. But well, I don't know when you talked about it. I think sometime last week to me about that whole business of the I will say it wrong every time, Comirnaty or whatever, however you're supposed to say it, and the Pfizer vaccine, because obviously they have a huge surplus of Pfizer and very, very, very limited quantities of this new ridiculously named product.
Well, it's not labeled as such. And
well, I mean the brand name of the ridiculous product. I can't say it. Just
Comirnaty.
Comirnaty, thank you. Oh gosh, that's gross.
Fantastic.
But when you go out and you go to any vaccine, any place that gives vaccines, you will not get Comirnaty. And Comirnaty is the one that is currently has a biological license approved. No, looking at
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the comment and Ellie was like,
yeah. I know it's when you're looking at.
I know. I'm sorry, but
oh, you can tell we're both sleep deprived.
Right. And the heat got to everybody.
Yeah. But so you have this brand new approved, the biological licensure is approved, but it is not vaccine approved yet. And that product can be marketed in this way that I'm already still kind of confused on, but I feel a little bit better. And they're telling you go out and get vaccinated right now with any vaccine, and you will not get the one approved, or at least licensure, biological license application approved. But you'll only get Pfizer, which is still under an EUA because it is different.
Well, it's under EUA from 12 to 15. It's not labeled. So again, we're back to that 2 standard deviation. So any Pfizer that, yes, Lisa, it is mRNA technology as well. And any Pfizer that is pure enough to be within the 2 standard deviation earns itself a label. So it's still the same ingredients. They both still have that.
I thought they had, I think I saw somewhere like in the official thing that, they're functionally the same, but they have slightly different.
Right. Because the EUA the one that's under that we have known as Pfizer.
Is it still known as Pfizer?
Huh?
I think my understanding is still that vaccine is still just called the Pfizer vaccine. It's just the new one that has the name.
So just the new one has the name. But okay, so I have a bottle of Pfizer. There's 6 doses in a doohickey and a vial. Yeah, like that 6. That's the sun. I'm sorry, but so you have a vial from Pfizer that we've always gotten. Say I'm hypothetically speaking that there's 6 doses in that vial. Okay, so that means every dose that I pull out, if I pull those out and I'm running my quality control and it contains it's pure enough to be within the 2 standard deviation of the ingredient, then it can earn the label of Comirnaty. However, and once it does that, then there's a little bit different, and I don't want to misspeak, so I don't want to say exactly what it is, but there's a little bit different chemical makeup. However, if it is outside of that 2 standard deviation, that lot number can never be labeled as the Comirnaty.
Yeah, so some of the Pfizer vaccine that's been out there for a while can be labeled as Comirnaty, but they do have different chemical makeups, but is supposed to be considered by the experts, which are frequently very wrong, to be
pure enough.
Yeah, and it's inconsequential. They are essentially the same. It's only lies.
Right. Like Marlboro Reds and Marlboro Lights, they're essentially the same.
They're essentially the same. Yeah. But it's interesting.
I was trying, because if I hear the whole cigarette thing, one more time, so I just figured, hey, why not throw it in there with COVID?
So. But the other thing that you said that is interesting is I know that Governor DeWine talked a while ago, early on, he encouraged pulling out a 7th dose. So how does that work? I mean, so basically, if you're doing 7 doses, you're getting a lower dose when compared to this new one, if it has to be given at the true dosage of 6 doses. I mean, this is like.
And so I just use that as a hypothetical, because I think it's really important to read the, if you're really interested in it, I would definitely read the ingredients, the EUA reissued, as well as the new inserts that will come into the ones that have been licensed as a biologic.
So those are all similar enough, that are close enough in the chemicals that they're actually interested in.
Right. It's actually the amount of the ones that they're interested in, because every product that we have, sorry, it's thundering at my house and the dog doesn't like it, but every single product that we have available on the market, there's actually a little bit of something in it that is not significant enough that they have to report to the FDA, and that includes our food and everything. As long as it's under a certain threshold, then they don't even have to list it.
Which is very frustrating to people who have allergies to minute.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And this is no different at all. So again, I would definitely strongly recommend doing that, looking at that, because it's pretty, you can even set them beside each other, just go through and highlight the things that are the same, and then see what's left over. And then I would recommend, even Google that and just see, is that significant? Is it not?
Yeah, and it's hard to know. Yeah.
What might be significant for me isn't for you, or vice versa. I can't have shellfish. So if there's 0.0025 milliliters of shellfish guts, I really need to freaking know that.
Yeah.
So that's just me, but that might be insignificant for you.
Yep. It's even minute quantities of things.
Right.
Okay, I need more clarification here. Okay, Sharon, which part? I am frequently confused as well, but maybe we can figure out which part is the confusing part, or just all of it, because I am also kind of confused.
So if while she's doing that, if the one that I shared with you, can you pull that up just so people can see where to go, so they're not like looking through tabs and tabs?
The one that I had up there with from the FDA thing, or
yeah, it says that I'm sharing it with you.
Oh, on your screen. There we go.
Yes, there we go.
So zoom in a little bit if you can.
Zoom in a little bit if I can.
Yeah.
Okay, and to zoom in,
I don't know.
I'm working on it. So this is just at the FDA website. Zoom. I can. Here we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit. Still.
I need to go more.
And scroll down a little bit so we can see what the words look like.
Okay. So this is, you can see at the top, it's at the FDA website. And this is, you notice it's for both of them. It's for the Pfizer, BioNTech, as well as Comirnaty. And you have prescribing information, fact sheets, and then of course the translation, which that's, neither here nor there for most of us. And it tells you it has been known as the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, and it will now be marketed as Comirnaty for prevention of COVID-19 disease in individuals 16 years and older. It continues to be available for emergency use authorization for individuals 12 to 15, and for the administration of a third dose in certain immunocompromised individuals.
So they haven't done it for the boosters yet then?
Well, that third dose is, people are thinking, oh, anybody can get that third dose. Here comes September. That is not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be for a certain population of immunocompromised people.
I thought it was that the immunocompromised could do it now, but then they were going to do it by when you had your first dose.
Because they can't. If Ohio wants to, good luck, you're operating outside of the EUA.
So what kind of legal ramifications? Because you also talked to me about some of the legal ramification mess of what's going on here, both in terms of Pfizer versus Comirnaty versus Johnson & Johnson and Moderna.
Right. So if I were to take a Johnson & Johnson vaccine right now, mm-hmm. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed with that or with Moderna. Zero.
Yeah.
It's the way that it's always been. So when we think about, I know for Ohio, we have is it Senate bill or House bill 244? I don't know which one it is.
244 for House Bill 244 was the one that said schools could not ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, and I didn't care for I understand why the wording was the way that it was, but I did not care for that wording because I thought, oh my gosh, as soon as it gets approved, that's not going to be good because you just eliminate, like you cut off your nose to spite your face for just a little bit.
The one you're referring to, just to make sure?
Yeah, it was on like the end of the military kids.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That one
However, that does still, even though I didn't care for the wording personally, but it does still cover them because these are still available under EUA. Especially or including for individuals 12 to 15 years. So if a school says you have to get vaccinated, okay, they're mandating the vaccine. If you don't get vaccinated, then all vaccinated people have to wear a mask and test standing on their head 3 times a week or whatever it is, whatever craziness they got going on right now. Then they're saying that you have to get the vaccine. That means that they're absorbing that liability of the one that's approved. If you choose to go ahead and get your kid the one that is operating under EUA of any of them,
so Moderna or Moderna, or the Pfizer that doesn't quite make it to
correct. Yeah, that's on you because there is one that is approved. Their license for biologic is approved to manufacture as a vaccine. That is the only one that if you get your child that one and the school is requiring it, like you can't come here. I'm Ohio State and you can't come here unless you're vaccinated. If you don't get that one, you've just absorbed whatever happens, the way that we've always seen it continue to happen. So at that point, it kind of gives a parent a leverage to say, okay, this is the one that's approved. You tell me where we're getting it and we'll go sign up or, start that conversation or, whatever. Where am I getting that? How can I get that? What is your recommendation? Because if they're requiring it, there has to be a standard order of or a standard operating procedure for them to follow.
So this is a critical point. If you are current, it's probably your best bet at this point in time, because if your work is requiring it, if your school is if any of them are requiring it of you, You can go and say, I cannot do that unless you can find me something that is labeled as Comirnaty. So
Comirnaty.
I almost got it.
So, but again, when I said, I highly recommend that you go and look, this is where in every one of those blue little lines, package insert, summary basis for regulatory action, approval letter, and then the facts for Comirnaty is all right there. I would definitely look at those. And then you go down and you have here the Pfizer BioNTech.
Sorry, you're off here. So we were very confused. I was like, what is she talking about?
Oh, do you see it now? I can't see what you're seeing.
Oh, really?
Okay. No.
Okay. So yeah, go back up again. And when you started moving around,
tell me where I'm.
You're at Comirnaty prescribing.
Yes. So all those blue lines, so package insert, you can click on that and it will pull up the actual package insert. Summary basis for regulatory action, approval letter, and facts. Do you see those four?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and if
so
you click on one, it will go to that page.
It'll populate whatever is at that link. And then, but I just want to point out, if you scroll down just a little bit more, and you can see which one I've clicked on, the fact sheet for recipients and caregivers, but the Pfizer BioNTech fact sheets. Fact sheet for healthcare providers administering the vaccine, recipients and caregivers, and frequently asked questions. So this is how you can tell that there's a little bit of a difference. See the Pfizer BioNTech, and then Comirnaty has its very own
package insert.
Yeah.
If there is no fact, so if you're going to get vaccinated, and because you're under threat of losing your job or whatever it is, and you've decided to go that way, ask for the package insert, because if they cannot give you that package insert, then this is something you should not take, because if you do, it's your fault. It's anything that happens to you, you cannot go back to your employer and say, I have been injured, and it's your fault for acquiring it or firing me.
Well, it's not, and I hate that sounds so harsh, and I know you're not a harsh person like that, but it's not necessarily your fault, but you're absorbing all of
I mean, the
liability.
And if you are being told, if you do not do this, you will be fired. It's one of those things where it's
right. And so then you can even scroll down further and you can see the letter of authorization, which was reissued. So there's a concurrence letter, and I really believe that's very important. I'm not going to spend time on it now, but for the general public to read the concurrence letter, and then immediately, within 24 hours, the letter of authorization was reissued. So I would definitely recommend looking at that.
The letter of authorization
and the concurrence. They came a day apart. So you got the 22nd, 23rd.
We need to be talked to like we're 5, okay? Including
I want everybody to go and read the concurrence letter and then read the letter of authorization.
Explain it to us.
I can.
Just click on there and it should pop right on up on our screen.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that would actually work or not.
All dark in there. Yep, we see it really well. If you can close that, the over on the left-hand side, you have that part. If you can hide that, that would make it.
How do you do that?
I don't know.
What if I do this? Can I do this?
Yeah.
Do you see really good?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to get clumped together. If you can get rid of that side thing, it might be. It might be in that little 3-line thing at the top left. That might be where it's hiding. So just get
check it out.
And now you can increase the percentage.
Yes. So here we go. Keep in mind the last one, that Catherine hit up. It was Dr. Patel. I just want to point that out. This is now coming to Dr. Mimar. And this was done on the 22nd. And it just lets him know that the EUA was reissued on August 12th under Section 564. I love Section 564. I quote it, pieces of it all the time. And then that just say, and by the way, you also submitted an EUA amendment on August 13th. And this was regarding the shelf life of the Pfizer, that now we can use it 3 months past the expiration date, 6 months to 9 months. And they confirmed that the concurrence on extending shelf life from 6 to 9 months when stored appropriately is applicable to batches that might have expired prior to the issuance of this concurrence letter.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and use the product. Basically what it's saying, this is the way it's saying, don't waste it. Use the product. If you guys are telling us that it's okay to use it past the 3 month or past the 6 months expiration and use it till it's 9, that's fine. Go ahead. And then it says, we have completed our review, and based on the information, we concur with the change. We agree with it. Any changes that you plan to implement to the description of the product, manufacturing, facilities, or equipment will need to be submitted as an amendment to the EUA and not implemented without concurrence by the agency. So what had happened is the company had implemented this prior to changing their plan. So they didn't amend it
before getting permission from the FDA, and they're
They
just
did.
walking clean with that.
Right. And that's perfectly fine. But okay, you guys did it. Don't do it again. But we're going to go ahead and let that continue. And it says, by the way, if there's any changes, you need to let us know pretty much. Okay. Keep that one in mind. That's your concurrence letter. And I think I just messed up. Oh, no, I didn't.
You're good.
So they reissued the next day a letter of authorization.
Okay.
Now, shame on you for
doing something without our permission.
Right. And again, this is for the Pfizer, not for, right. So the one that's labeled, there has been nothing that says, yes, you can use it beyond the 6 months. That is not in anything at this time. So it's going to get extremely confusing for.
Which is why I want you to explain it, because
even for healthcare providers, those giving the shots, it's going to get extremely confusing for them. So, and this just goes to say, on February 4th, there has been a public health emergency for people living abroad. And then in March 22nd or March 27th, there was circumstances by the Secretary of HHS to justify the EUAs. 13 pages. So that just gives a history of it. And the VAERS says here, on August 23rd, we have concluded that revising this EUA is appropriate to protect the public health and safety under my favorite 564. A reissued on August 12th, a letter of authorization in its entirety with revisions incorporated to clarify EUA will remain in place for Pfizer BioNTech vaccine previously authorized indication and uses, and to authorize use of this mRNA vaccine under this EUA for certain uses that are not included in the approved BLA.
What?
Yes.
What?
Correct. The fact sheet for recipients and caregivers was updated as the vaccine information fact sheet recipients, which comprises the fact sheet of the authorized BioNTech about FDA licensed vaccine. FDA licensed vaccine. Where you see approval? Do you see it?
What? No, but this is what I'm confused about. So they have a biologic licensure approved.
Mm-hmm. Just the licensure.
The licensure has been approved.
Correct.
So where they can market it as a vaccine to reduce symptoms Why do they need to also slide under the EUA?
For certain uses that are not included in the approved BLA, because as just an approved BLA.
But what other uses besides the approved BLA do they want?
Well, because one is age, 2 is dose, and 3 is vaccine. Because BLA stand alone is just a biologic.
So this is telling us that they're mixing them together, because the EUA is for a vaccine, but just EUA, and now they're trying
you're using it outside. It's what we used to call, for this instance, just this instance, I swear to goodness, is what is kind of like off-label or compassionate care, compassionate use. So you can use it outside of the BLA. You can use it as a vaccine.
Because it is not a vaccine yet, officially.
Right. Or you can use it maybe a little bit more of it, or a little bit less if it's a 2-year-old, type thing. Whatever. I don't know that. I'm just throwing out instances that, any other vaccine I've ever given we adjusted by weight.
Yeah.
So I would not give a 6-month-old the same dose as a 26-year-old.
I would hope.
But we're not there yet. So we're still trying to gather that data. So are they. So if they're using it outside of that, then that's fine under the EUA, but they can't use it under the license like that.
So basically, the EUA allows them to treat it like a vaccine and allows them to mess with what they're doing.
Right, kind of tweak it.
But with the BLA, they can only use it at
it's strict
dose.
Right.
And
right.
And so, only to a certain age. Mm-hmm. But because of the addition of it to the EUA as well, they can pretty much do whatever they want.
I mean, yeah. So, however, if you're actually getting the one that's licensed, they do have to provide the information regarding myocarditis and pericarditis.
I don't know if I'm getting less confused or more confused.
They don't have to tell you anything. Nothing at all. If you walk into a vaccination station and say, I want this, I want this, and they're like, oh, we got Pfizer. You fill out a couple question form. At least you're supposed to. I don't even know if they do that completely, but you're supposed to fill out a form. And then you sit down and they give it to you.
And they don't tell you if it's Pfizer or Comirnaty, if they're dosing it in a certain way, or
I mean, they have to tell you what you're getting.
They have to tell you Pfizer or Comirnaty, or
right. Yes. Okay, absolutely. However, if it's the Comirnaty, yeah, I said it right there. I had to think. I have to like clap and sound it out to make sure I'm saying it right, because it just doesn't flow. Then they do have to give you the information regarding the myocarditis and pericarditis, for sure. And then it says, down below that in the individuals 12 through 15, remember, it's not licensed for 12 through 15. So it's under the EUA for 12 through 15. And then, in addition, FDA revised the fact sheet for healthcare providers administering or vaccination providers to include the following warning: fainting may occur, and then the myocarditis and pericarditis is on there. But this is, and like I said, I'm not going to go all the way through it, but there's some really good information in this 13 pages.
Yeah, but even people like me who have been following this for a long time look at it, my eyes cross, and I start to pass out, and it's just the language that they use just right there. I never would have caught that. I never would have understood what they just said there, because I'm just that kind of very specific meanings I just don't catch.
So here's, it's really interesting. The levels of total SARS, the study arms were pre-intervention anti-RBD titers and neutralizing antibodies, because those are the only two tests that can pick up anything that demonstrates that you've had the vaccine, whereas you can just do a simple titer for natural if you've acquired it naturally, and you'll still get, the T cell response, the anti-RBD, the S1 and S2 subunits as well. But it says the binding antibodies indicative of a significant response occurred 4 weeks after the third dose. 4 weeks after the third dose, and 33 out of 60, or 55% of people, of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccinated group, and 10 out of 57, or 17.5, of the placebo. And that in 60 individuals who received a third vaccine dose, the adverse event profile was similar to that after the second dose, and no grade 3 or grade 4 adverse events were reported, because again, it's self-reported. And then it goes on to say they use a totally different, doesn't have anything to do with it, with Pfizer at all, this supportive paper by Hall. It has nothing to do with Pfizer whatsoever. Of elderly and persons with comorbidities, supports the conclusion that a third dose of Pfizer may be effective in this population. We're not sure, because we don't have that, but we don't have that data, but we're going to go based off what Moderna did and this paper that has absolutely nothing to do with Pfizer. For immunocompromised individuals, at least 12 who have received 2 doses and who have undergone, and this is September 20th, this is who will be available for, who have undergone a solid organ transplant or are diagnosed with conditions that are considered to have an equivalent, meaning an equivalent level of the solid organ transplant.
We can't see it, so roll up a little more.
Better?
It's after the break. Keep going if it's after the break.
No, it's right here. It's above the break.
There are too many words.
12 years of age who have received 2 doses of Pfizer and undergone a solid organ transplant. Yeah. Or who are diagnosed with conditions that are considered to have an equivalent level of immunocompromise. So they are hereby authorizing use.
Again, authorization, not
under EUA, to provide a 2-dose regimen for ages 12 through 15, or to provide a third dose of 12 years or older if they have undergone a solid organ transplant. So what that would mean is, okay, that 12-year-old had 2 Moderna. They think it's probably okay based on that paper above. They had nothing to do.
That had nothing to do with Pfizer.
To go ahead and give them a third dose as Pfizer.
So the other thing about this is, as I understood it, they were talking about starting on the healthcare workers, and they were planning on starting for the healthcare workers and those who are also.
Who is they?
At least DeWine. I don't know who else. But
I don't know. He worked for the FDA.
I know, but this is the business of, they want to start giving it to people, the third dose, 8 months after they got their first one, that they are, and they
have no protection.
But they're not, that's not even allowed to happen from what I'm reading here, is they cannot do it because it's only for immune compromised. So
and immune compromised is really broad. It's really for those who have had a solid organ transplant. Those are the ones, because we know, because there's NIH has already done studies. You can take that off if you want.
Oh, right. I'm in control. Yeah. Always a dangerous thing to leave me in control.
But we know, because we've done studies. Where are you? I don't see you anymore.
I don't know if I'm still here. You're still here.
Oh, yay,
We're
there
all
we go.
still here.
We know because we've done studies that are immunocompromised in any vaccine, it will, there's you run the risk of blunting.
Yep. Well, yeah. Well, so I think I'll try to explain a little bit in terms of what the blunting
Okay.
situation is. What's going on is that you have drugs that suppress your immune system, and specifically your adaptive immune system. And your adaptive immune system is what builds your antibodies. And if that is the action of these vaccines, they build antibodies. They don't mess around. I mean, they don't increase any of your innate immune responses or anything like that. Which is one of the reasons why I think we're doing so well with the immune compromised and not getting as ill as everybody was afraid of early on. People who were on immunosuppressive drugs, well, those immunosuppressive drugs only affect the adaptive immune system. So if the innate immune system is the important part of this, that's why we haven't been seeing immunocompromised people getting super ill like everybody expected them to.
You're absolutely right. And the CDC paid, or they helped fund the study that NIH published, and I share it all the time. I'm like, that's not correct. That says that there should be, in the next 5 years, should be a really better choice for vaccination on the market if it's necessary for those that are neurodegenerative, immunocompromised in any way, because we found that those that have an immuno or a suppressed system for whatever reason,
Yep.
if their disease is well controlled, they have a good natural ability to fight.
Yep, because HCQ, its other name is Plaquenil, and Plaquenil is given to those with autoimmune conditions, things
Right.
like lupus and things of that nature. That's one of the reasons why they were saying, oh, no, we can't give out HCQ because that will take it away from those with immune conditions that require suppression and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's one of the
If their disease,
is under control.
right,
And
then they have, right, and they're actually, I think the study, it showed like 3 times the army to fight, and they're not at a higher risk.
No.
Again, if it's well controlled. And the second part of that was, however, the vaccine may cause blunting, so you may not have a good response.
Yep, the vaccine, because those drugs are suppressing your adaptive immune system, because in autoimmunity, what is going on is you have antibodies to your own body. So you suppress that whole creation of antibodies. You will suppress the creation of antibodies when you're vaccinated as well. Is that a good way of explaining it?
Yeah, and that's perfect. But that kind of leads me into the next thing. I always feel, and I've said this, and I know Kenna is busy, so she's not watching, but I always feel really odd about personally about not I want to say against mRNA, but I took mRNA target therapy for a target tumor years ago, not that many years ago because I'm not old, but a few years ago, pre-COVID. And it was a Moderna trial that I was in. And I was counseled so heavily, and I was put through, I had to go up once a week and I had blood drawn every 2 weeks, which, is not uncommon for any trial except COVID apparently. But there was no self-reporting for me. They wanted to see me. It was, head to toe check. There were several tests that were done, and a lot of counseling, as far as even before I started, they told me, we know mRNA therapy can increase your risk of shingles and hepatitis B. So one of the first things I had to get done, in the conglomerate of blood work that they draw, was a V-zoster titer for shingles.
Yep.
as well as a hepatitis B series, just to see if I was, where I was at with my hepatitis B, before I even started as a baseline. And they checked my skin integrity constantly. And it did not hit me until just recently that, oh my gosh,
We don't know.
nobody has been told that mRNA therapy, you are at, a 4 times greater risk of developing shingles than hepatitis B.
Anything
Like,
that can reactivate itself.
yeah, it's published. It's all over. The other thing was active TB.
Yeah.
So I had a chest X-ray literally weekly. So I don't understand. Like, it just didn't hit me. And then I'm hearing these people like, I got the shot and now I got shingles. And I'm like, well, you took mRNA. What did you think was going to happen?
What does
Not realizing that they weren't told. They were not counseled like we were.
Yep. And it's happening all over the place now. So one of the things I'm kind of curious about, what you just said there, made me think about. I mean, I don't know X-rays and the differences between what TB looks like and what COVID pneumonia looks like. I mean,
It's not even remotely
not even
close.
It would be obvious if they.
For sure. Yeah.
So we haven't really. I don't think we've seen much of an increase in TB, have we? Or maybe we have.
We did.
We did.
Yeah, briefly. We did. Yeah, which, I mean, we see TB every season. I don't want to say season, but it just seems like it's more in the winter. But you see TB all the time and in the hospital working. Like, that's nothing uncommon. I'm sure it's not comfortable for the patient, but you wouldn't even realize it. You'd go in there and care for the patient, and you get like this little paper in your mailbox where it says, hey, go get tested for TB, your 1-step or 2-step, whatever your facility needs, because you were exposed 10 days ago and you've already taken care of like 45 more patients or whatever, and you're like, okay, and you go get it. And then once you get so many and it's such a short period of time, then they're like, don't get the TB test anymore at healthcare provider. Just go get a chest X-ray because you've taken so many. If you keep, they're gonna come up positive, and it's gonna be a false positive. So, yes, Sue, it is possible even with my sister who was just jabbed got shingles. Is this possible even with the shingles shot? I want to make sure I understand. She got the shingles after she got the shingles shot, or she got the COVID-19 vaccine and then got shingles, but she had the COVID shot or had the shingles shot previously. So I almost said yes, but I don't think I just want to okay, she had the shingles shot recently. And then she got shingles?
Yep.
Or am I talking to 2 different people?
There's 2 different people involved, I think.
Okay.
So because, there's 2 different people involved talking about it.
Okay.
That we have that, the doctors are advising to get shingles shot before the vaccine, which I had also heard happening. And then a different story here with the sister.
My sister who was jabbed just got shingles. Is this possible even with the shingles shot?
Yeah. I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, with any, if it's the shingles vaccine or the COVID-19 vaccine, absolutely. That those are both. I mean, it's not an immunization.
Well,
it's a vaccination.
Not also live?
I think it's attenuated because Erica can't take any live vaccines. So.
Well, I mean, the attenuated even have live.
Yeah, but I don't think. I think there's 2 different ones. I know one is
for kids. That one is definitely.
Yeah, but that's a 2-step. No.
Yeah, that's a contagious one as well. Potentially contagious.
Right.
I don't know enough about the shingles except for that they are supposed to be quite painful.
They're horrible. Like, I 10 out of 10 don't recommend you go get that. Like, I had chickenpox as a child, obviously, and I don't remember, but it's that nerve pain that you're just like, this is not okay at all. Something's wrong. Satan has taken my soul and it's all on one nerve. Like, it's, The new shingle shot is 2 doses if they're over a certain age. Same with the pneumonia, yeah, but there is one that's just and normally most healthcare workers get that one, that's just a one shot. But anyways, yeah, you can get that regardless. It doesn't matter, especially if you had chickenpox as a kid, then you get the shingle shot, you're more at risk to, just briefly.
Oh, just kind of like the COVID vaccines as well, where it actually makes you more susceptible for some period of time after.
Yeah, right. But that's any mRNA. Like they told me, you're more susceptible to getting things and it was a certain period of time, depending on like the sliding scale that you were on with how much mRNA that you took. Because it's the nanolipid and that like lyses the cell.
Yeah. That it pokes holes in your cell,
right?
And holes
and so
in your cells, it weakens it.
Right. So that's like a gate. that's opening the gate to letting things in. Right. So if anything is dormant, or if somebody was sick close by, however, because of that, and your body says, "Hey, what's going on?" While you're taking this, I was also able for a certain period of time after I had that mRNA to actually something activated in my body that was lying dormant. And I didn't know that I had it yet because I was under mRNA therapy. I could actually give it to those around me. So I kind of stayed in my bubble for a hot minute, whatever time that they said, that I could. But I can remember having to go in a different way a couple of times because I was still, it was time for me to report, but I was still, in that time frame. And obviously I didn't want to get anything, but I also didn't want to give anybody else anything until I got my test back showing that, I wasn't breathing out, especially, your RSV. That was a big one that they were very concerned with, me breathing it out.
Well, here we are. We have this massive unseasonal spike in RSV cases, although that also kind of confuses me as well, because if it were from people who were vaccinated, we should have seen it much earlier, because that was when we were surging a whole bunch of people.
I think
right now it doesn't make any sense because we haven't had that many.
It does. But because I don't think it's related to the vaccine necessarily. I think that's just what you call immunity debt. These kids and parents, caregivers, they've been masked and they've kind of been secluded away from people for the most part. And
I haven't seen very many kids out, especially in last year, the winter time through spring. You just didn't see kids anywhere.
Right. And so you
vanished.
Right. And so what happens then, they need that, I'm not saying go roll your kid in a puddle of oil. I'm just saying, they need to breathe fresh air. That's just common sense.
And also be exposed to people with low levels of
if you expose a little bit at a time, and we have a normally functioning system, we might be, but here we are now, we're getting hit all at once. These kids are, so we are seeing it earlier. And so it does make sense. And no, I'm not saying that the 2-shot shingles doesn't help prevent shingles from the COVID vaccine, but you're asking the shingle shot is for shingles, period. The COVID vaccine is for COVID-19 to decrease the chances of death.
Yeah, so I think the question is basically, if you get the shingle shot first, it's not going to protect you from getting shingles after you take the COVID-19 vaccine. Because the COVID-19 vaccine, because it is an mRNA, and from your own personal experience pre-COVID, you were already counseled on it can precipitate shingles. So
and I did have to, any boosters that I needed, I had to get those prior to taking the mRNA, that just to be in that study. And you're looking at.
I think I understand the confusion as well here. So you have if you were to get the shingles vaccine first, it doesn't really protect you or it does protect you more.
Well, the theory is,
the theory is it should protect you more from receiving the mRNA vaccine, which they already knew years ago.
Right.
If you get mRNA technology,
you're at a greater risk.
4 times more susceptible to having a disease that is a process of reactivation, like Hep B and shingles, and I'm assuming there are probably other diseases. Well, and also it makes sense with those early reports of people who would test positive for HIV afterwards.
Well, yeah, because as you're looking at your CD4, CD8, I mean, that makes total sense to me, you know, and I'm sure it's a false positive for a time until those wane off. But, you know, they've also said the pneumonia shot, I think if you look back between the emails that, you know, Fauci even, clearly admitted, you know, yes, you should be getting your pneumonia shot prior to your COVID vaccine to help you. If you were to contract COVID and you have the pneumonia shot, it should give your lungs an extra layer of protection.
Well, I'm so glad he was so data driven with that, with the shoulds and the probablys and the coulds, and we think so. I mean, we're following that.
But here's the issue. You know, one, it's not talked about heavily as it should be. Again, that goes back to full disclosure. But 2, you know, when you look at pneumonia and the shingle shot for both, most people, not all, but I know especially Medicare patients, those aren't free. You know, you're talking like $42, $47 a piece for some people on a fixed income that are elderly. That's a huge amount of money for them. And so, okay, am I taking the free one, or am I going to pay out, you know, whatever it is to get all of these boosters? Or I just got a pneumonia shot before COVID. You know, why do I have to get another one, even though my 5 years is not up, or, you know, whatever? Because again, it's a big chunk of change for them.
Yep.
So if this is truly about health, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just hypothetically speaking, if it's truly about health, then why are all of those vaccines that can just help that patient have the best outcome free as well?
Things to ponder on. All right, so got any more comments on this? I want to hop back.
No, I'm good. I'm done now. Sorry.
All right, so hopping back to Sharon's question, trying to figure out, you know, how it all fits together, and that's also what I was trying to do here. So to break it down,
I love her.
To break it down into as orderly as a fashion as I can here. So, you know, correct me if I'm on the right track or I missed some major point. What we have going on is that Pfizer has received a biologic license approved.
Their biological license application has been approved.
That allows them to use it off label, and that allows them to market it in a certain manufacturing thing or whatever, however that one went down, you are authorized to manufacture the product, which is indicated for active immunization to prevent coronavirus disease caused by SARS-CoV-2. And so that's approved, but it has not gone through the second portion of the process, which is to have the longer term data, which I believe in this FDA approval letter said something.
It should be like 2024-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was counting.
So this is pretty much the earliest. So we've got all the different things they're supposed to follow that they were told you must tell us what these how the outcomes from these are. You know, check the myocarditis, check this kind of stuff, check more on kids. But the earliest one would be October 7th for 12 to 15 year olds.
No, that was October 7, 2020.
Oh, 20 talk. So that was
So
last.
that was just their protocol.
Oh, right. I can read for real. So that one was already submitted last year, but the first results we're going to expect towards full vaccine approval won't come in until 2023. And the very last ones that they're supposed to have the final things for are not until October 31st, 2024.
And that's for the 6 months of
That's
age.
for the 6 months.
Yeah. Less than 6 months of age.
So according to this, there won't be any approval, even remotely possible, for the under 6 months crowd until 2024 at the earliest. The 6 to 12 months full approval won't come.
That's just a study.
Oh, wait. So
this is 6 months to less than 12 years.
Which they've all been talking about. They're going to do it by December, but that's only the EUA. But we know that they're going to claim it's approved, but in truth, they cannot fully approve as a vaccine until May of 2024.
Right, and you can get on the national clinical, or no, it's called clinicaltrials.gov, and punch in those numbers, like you see the deferred pediatric study and that number.
007. Okay.
Yeah, and it's full disclosure. You might not hear it being talked about in general, but it is full disclosure in writing.
So those were only talking about pediatric assessments, but I think I remember in here also seeing for.
We acknowledge the timeline you submitted right there on August 21st, which say you'll conduct the study. Correct. Yeah, that's what. Okay, 2025.
A non-interventional post-approval safety study of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 to evaluate the occurrence of myocarditis and pericarditis. That was one of the ones I saw. So to truly have all the data about myocarditis, they do not need to submit it until Halloween 2025. Correct. And that would be the earliest.
I mean, they still got some other, they have to hit those points or say why they're not hitting them.
So if things go bad, it could end faster. But if they are following on track, we still won't have the full report back until Halloween 2025, and that's for older individuals. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some more down here as well. Yeah. So
that's for the European.
No, this one's also occurrence of myocarditis
for the European study.
Oh.
Yeah. So because there's a little bit more of this product over there than there is here. Isn't that interesting?
Okay, that must be for pediatrics, and that's not even to 2027.
Right. This is from age 5 to 15, because they do have to study them long term.
Yeah.
And again, it's not uncommon to see, a decade to get.
It's the biggest.
Here it is, the protocols to your IND with a cross-reference letter to this BLA and the other BLA explaining the protocol submitted in the IND. And then they have to have the post-marketing correspondence. So now that they're able to market, now they have to follow that protocol as well. There's a lot of things that have to be done. My concern is, we've been waiting for wonderful products that have shown a lot of promise in a different area for a lot longer. And here, this one is I just feel like it's been butchered in the media and by our non-clinical leaders.
Intelligent enough, and I am sitting here struggling, trying to make sense of it. And I am not at all surprised that the media doesn't understand it, because this is deep stuff. I mean, it's tiny little word variations. I mean, just that whole thing about, red tape has been cut, but now you're explaining these things usually happen at the same time. So if somebody's just following what they're seeing, it will be very easy to confuse those and conflate those together if you do not know the specific words and how the order of words matter, because you had explained that under all other circumstances, pretty much, the BLA license approval or the application is submitted almost simultaneously with the vaccine approval because it had been in this process for 10 plus years, 8 plus years. So people who have been following this, but on a more shallow level, they'll hear it's been approved and just simply say it's done. They've done the whole thing, because the usual order of things is that those two things happen almost simultaneously.
Right. Yes, they do, unless it's a biologic that has no intention. So their endpoint was never to have a vaccine. Their endpoint was to treat JRA or whatever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. Why a lot of people are going along with it, because they just don't know the distinction, because there's never been a need to distinguish between the two.
Yeah, when have you, and I personally have taken a strong personal conviction and stance, just because I'm a full proponent of having experimental or in trial products available to anyone with any condition that fully understands and gives consent, meaning they are counseled heavily.
Consent.
Right, and very much informed consent. They're counseled heavily. They look at the benefit and risk, and for whatever reason, they feel that this is right for them. It could be a matter of, I have to just try. Typically, those are people that are in a situation
where they're going to die anyway. So
yeah, or they don't have a choice.
Yeah,
and you don't want left with that what if. So because I feel so strongly about that, I would never want to take this away from anyone. I just want them I want their choice to be informed.
Yeah, and a choice.
Right, and a choice, because what I'm seeing now, I'm not seeing a whole, on
definitely not informed.
Right. No, and I guess that didn't register with me until recently, that when the shingles thing, and I just kind of looked like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, it's for you, it's obvious, but for the rest of us, I mean, I had picked up on that, I don't know when, a while ago, but even then it's like, I mean, it's definitely not out there. It's definitely not talked about, and yet people go on like they have a shield around them.
Right, and maybe for a lot of people, they don't get that, and kudos to them. I just want the same opportunity as what they have, which is informed consent. I want information and I want availability, but just because it's right for me, again, doesn't mean that it's right for Catherine or vice versa. If she takes something, she better not expect me to take it, because I need to decide if I want to do that or not.
Peer pressure won't work on you.
No. Mm-mm.
All right. So it is an hour and a half. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we should probably.
I hope.
Sorry.
People watching it got a little bit more. I definitely, I feel like I understand a little bit more, but I mean, this thing is so complicated and so twisted and so different than anything that's happened in the past.
It's murky. It's very murky.
More than a little murky. I mean, this is.
Just think, I mean, I always say, think of it like a car. If you got the prototype or trusty rusty, which one are you going to know? Which one are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
And if you get a prototype and it doesn't work out because it's a prototype, there's no lemon law coverage like there is with trusty rusty. That you can't just take it back. Once you have this, you can't just unback. Take it out. Can't really be like, JK, just kidding, I don't want it anymore. But again, if you're comfortable with it, I will cheer you on. But I would encourage all to read and ask questions.
Yep, definitely of you. I'm just gotta, properly use our antecedents and we're all good.
Right. Dan, yes, they are disclosing possible side effects with the licensure approval.
Yeah, so that with, but only on those that are labeled Comirnaty, not on the Pfizer, the original ones that are not to the acceptable level of labeled Comirnaty, which you can still receive if you go to a vaccination station. If it is labeled Pfizer, BioNTech, those ones are ones where they won't tell you what the side effects are. Same with Moderna, same with J&J.
Right. Just say, I'd like to see the insert, please.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. May I see the insert? If they say there is no insert, then
I don't even say may I, so that's why Catherine is just a nicer person than what I am. I just say I'd like to, and if they can't, then I can't show you my arm. So
that's one last one. I mean, it's based on your situation. If you happen to be a young woman, avoid the J&J. If you happen to be a young man, avoid either of the mRNAs.
Yeah, I think it's a very personal choice, and it's going to depend on what kind of history is there, right? Which is the whole point of filling out that form. And I have gotten a hold of a couple of the forms just here from Ohio that people have filled out that they should not have been a candidate. They should have been, by protocol, referred back to their physician to discuss before receiving it, and they weren't. Again, if there's a factor V laden issue, where you're prone to clots, you need to talk to your doctor, and I know that might not be what is published widely, but if you look close enough, even at the CDC, it says, and so does the provider information, refer to their physician. And there's enough studies at this point, 19 months into it or whatever the heck we are, that that they definitely need to there's other things available, or will be eventually. I do think it'll be longer now than what we anticipated, because once something is approved, anything else that was wanting to seek EUA will not be able to do so. So they have to follow the traditional pathway to approval.
Yeah.
But yes, again, your jab, your body, that's completely up to you and your specific situation. I would just say ask questions, and especially one that you ask a provider that you trust. I will be very honest. My family, and we see a lot of doctors, I have had no issues whatsoever with the physicians themselves. I had one tiny incident with a registration person, but I have had no issues with the physicians themselves as far as, have you gotten the shot? And I'm like, did you get yours? I immediately start out with that. You show me yours, I'll show you mine type thing. But there, and I've even had several that, especially from my husband, like, he's not a candidate. Like, you're going to hold off for a while, and they'll say, if you truly feel that you want it now, that's fine. But I would recommend for him holding off. My daughter, the immunologist, one never even mentioned it until the end of the visit, and was like, you didn't get that yet, did you? And she was like, no. And they're like, okay, well, here's what can happen if you do. Your joints can inflame, you've already had an issue with Plaquenil, with your heart rate. And it just went down the list. And she's like, yeah, you had me at my joints,
Yeah.
And they're like, and chances of it working are few and far between, because you're on, a JAK inhibitor, a DMARD, and a tumor receptor. So they're like, hey, if you want to take another shot, that's on you, but we would not recommend it.
Yeah, it won't create antibodies correctly, and you get all the harm, all the potential harm, and none of the potential benefit.
Yeah. So, and like I said, we see a lot, and hasn't been any that we've had issue with. I only had, like I said, one with and if we had more time, I would share that. So we don't. And I
need to go to sleep.
Yeah, I do need to go to sleep. My eyeballs.
Thank you, Carrie, and
thank you. You guys have a good night.
Stayed this long to watch us.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.